Have you ever looked back at a relationship and wondered, how did I not see the signs? How did someone who said they loved you slowly drain the life out of you? You're not alone. And the truth is, it doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you were human. You believed, you hoped, and you loved. But what if I told you that over 1,800 years ago, a man had already written the blueprint to help you avoid women like that? That man was Marcus Aurelius. Before we dive in, I want to ask you to do two things. Subscribe to the channel if you believe in growing through philosophy and emotional intelligence, and like this video if you've ever been hurt, not because you were wrong, but because you loved someone too much to see they were. Watch this till the end, because these 7 signs might just change the way you see love forever. Let me tell you a story about a man named Ethan. He wasn't perfect, but he had a good heart. He worked hard, stayed loyal, and believed in love. He met her at a bookstore. She had this mysterious vibe. She smiled like she knew secrets no one else did. Ethan fell hard, but what he didn't know was that she wasn't deep. She was just unreadable. She wasn't wise. She was just manipulative. The Stoics believed that character reveals itself in pressure, in patterns, and in the little moments. And that's how Ethan learned. One painful chapter at a time. The 7 signs of a foolish woman, all through the lens of Stoic philosophy. Sign 1. She lacks self-control. Emotion rules over reason. Have you ever loved someone who made you feel like walking on eggshells? Where one wrong word, one slightly delayed reply, or one moment of silence would lead to a storm? You try your best to avoid the cracks, but somehow you're always the one blamed. Always the one who apologizes. That was Ethan's life. When Ethan met her, she was electric. Her smile lit up the room. She laughed with her whole heart, cried without filters, and lived like every moment was her last. It felt passionate, wild, raw. But soon that passion turned to chaos. See, Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But Ethan didn't understand this yet. And the woman he loved? She had no power over her emotions. Her moods didn't shift. They exploded. One minute they'd be laughing on the couch, feet tangled, hearts open, and the next, she'd accuse him of not loving her because he didn't comment on her new hairstyle. He hadn't even noticed the change. And now he was being emotionally crucified for it. He started blaming himself. Maybe he wasn't paying enough attention. Maybe he should have called sooner. Maybe he really was the problem. Have you ever been there? Loving someone so intensely that you ignore how they make you feel, just because you don't want to lose them? That's what happens when you fall for someone ruled by emotion, not reason. One night Ethan was stuck in traffic. A flat tire in the pouring rain. He texted her, "Hey babe, I'll be late." "Please don't worry." She read it and blocked him. By the time he got to her place, wet, tired, and genuinely worried, she was curled on the couch, mascara running, wine glass in hand. "Don't talk to me," she said. "You clearly don't care." He stood there, frozen, not knowing whether to explain, comfort, or just disappear. And that's the danger of loving someone with no self-control. They don't just feel things, they weaponize them. They don't regulate their chaos, they share it with you, force it on you, and then blame you for not handling it well. Marcus Aurelius believed that the highest form of strength wasn't physical, it was emotional mastery. But Ethan's love didn't master her emotions. She surrendered to them. Every argument became a performance. Every small issue a battlefield. And every apology was his. Let me ask you something real. Have you ever apologized for something you didn't do just to keep the peace? That's not peace. That's self-betrayal. That's loving someone who cannot love themselves enough to stay calm. So remember this. A woman who cannot control her emotions will try to control yours. And that isn't love. That's emotional enslavement. Ethan didn't realize it back then, but every outburst wasn't love. It was a warning. And maybe, just maybe, you've seen those warnings too. Sign 2. She believes the world owes her entitlement disguised as standards. Have you ever felt like you were giving and giving, but somehow it was never enough? This was Ethan's reality. He gave her the world. He listened to her dreams, fought for her when the world stood against them, and made sacrifices every day. But no matter how much he gave, it was never enough. She didn't just want love, she demanded it. And not just love. She expected perfection. At first, it seemed like any relationship. A little more attention here, a little more affection there. It felt like just a healthy standard. But soon it turned into a demand, a set of rules that Ethan could never seem to meet. One night she told him, "You should take me out more. Like, really take me out. Treat me like I'm the most important thing in your life." Ethan, not one to ignore a request, took her to a fancy restaurant the very next weekend. He thought it would be enough, thought she'd be happy, but when the bill came, she barely glanced at it before saying, "This is it? You know, I thought we were past this. Don't you want to treat me like I deserve?" Ethan was taken aback. "Don't I deserve something a little more extravagant?" she added. He stood there, blinking, trying to make sense of it. This wasn't about the dinner, it was about something deeper. She didn't just want to be loved. She wanted to be adored, elevated, put on a pedestal while he quietly became invisible. Have you ever been in a relationship where you give your best, but it's never enough? Where your love feels like an obligation and not a choice? Where you find yourself constantly striving to meet standards set by someone who can never be satisfied? Ethan soon realized that it wasn't love she wanted. It was validation. Validation that she was superior, that she was the most important thing, that nothing was ever enough for her. It wasn't about growing together. It was about her demanding to be the center of the universe. And Ethan, he was just her audience. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." But what about when the person you love isn't focused on being a good person? What if they're focused only on what they can take from you? She told him once, "If you really loved me, you'd give up your friends, your hobbies, everything, and be here for me." Ethan stood there feeling like a shell of himself. He had always been taught that love was about mutual growth, support, and respect. But this wasn't love. This was ownership. Do you remember a time when someone told you, "If you really cared, you'd change this about yourself"? That wasn't love. That was a prison. And with each passing day, Ethan realized he wasn't being loved. He was being used. She wanted more, always more, until Ethan's identity began to shrink. His time, his energy, his spirit, it was no longer his own. It was hers. Because to her, the world did owe her everything. But true love doesn't demand. It doesn't demand sacrifices that leave one person drained. True love doesn't make you feel like a servant to someone else's ego. So here's the truth, plain and simple. If you feel like you're always giving and never getting, if you're always the one compromising, but she's never satisfied, you're not in a relationship, you're in a transaction. And Ethan finally, after months of heartbreak, realized it was time to stop paying. Sign 3. She uses guilt to control manipulation under the mask of concern. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you were constantly apologizing, even when you weren't sure what you were sorry for? Ethan didn't know how it happened, but slowly, he became a man who couldn't make a decision without wondering how it would affect her. He couldn't say no without feeling a tightness in his chest, the weight of an invisible guilt pressing down on him. It all started innocently enough. She'd ask, "Can you spend the evening with me?" Of course, Ethan wanted to. They had a beautiful connection. But one night he had plans with his friends, plans he'd made weeks ago. So he told her, "I'm really sorry, but I'm meeting my friends tonight. Can we do something tomorrow?" Her face fell. For a moment it seemed like she was upset, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came a few hours later. Ethan got a text. It was simple. "I guess I'm just not as important as your friends. I mean, if you wanted to, you could have canceled on them. I guess that's what real love is, huh?" The words stung more than they should have. It wasn't just a simple disappointment. It was a silent accusation. It was the beginning of a cycle that Ethan didn't even know he was stepping into. Have you ever felt that? Like no matter what you did, there was always a hint of disappointment, a sense of guilt lingering over you, even when you didn't know what you were apologizing for. As weeks went by, Ethan began to notice a pattern. Whenever he tried to spend time doing something for himself, whether it was going to the gym, working late on a project, or simply enjoying a quiet moment with his thoughts, she'd find a way to make him feel guilty. She didn't outright say, "You can't do that." No, it was far more subtle. She'd say things like, "I guess I'll just stay home alone again. It's fine. I'm used to it." Or, "It's okay, I'll just sit here and wait." Like always. And the worst part? Ethan started believing her. He started believing that he owed her something every time. He wanted to do something for himself. Slowly, his plans, his hobbies, his passions, they all began to slip away. And for what? To avoid making her upset? To avoid that look of disappointment in her eyes? The truth was, Ethan was losing himself. He was becoming a man who apologized for simply existing. His every action was weighed down by the fear of upsetting her. His decisions were no longer about what made him happy. It was about making sure she was happy. Because if she wasn't, the guilt would come. The silent treatment, the passive-aggressive comments, the long lingering sighs. And then it hit him. Was this love? Or was this manipulation? When she would send him those heartbreaking texts or tell him how unimportant he was making her feel, he didn't see it for what it was, guilt-tripping. She was using his love for her as a way to control him. She wasn't just sad that he wasn't around. She was angry that he was living his life without her. She was using guilt as a tool to mold him into someone who never dared to step outside of her demands. Have you ever been guilted into staying somewhere longer than you wanted to? Ever felt like you couldn't say no to someone you loved without feeling like you were letting them down? That's the trap of guilt manipulation. It makes you question your worth, your actions, and your ability to make decisions that don't revolve around someone else's happiness. So if you've ever felt like you were being pulled into this emotional trap, take a moment to reflect. True love doesn't require guilt. True love supports you, even when you want to take time for yourself. True love doesn't demand that you sacrifice who you are for the sake of another's comfort. Ethan didn't realize it at first, but he was caught in a cycle of guilt. It wasn't love, it was control disguised as concern. Sign 4. She constantly plays the victim. Life is always against her. Have you ever been in a relationship where no matter what happens, she's always the one who's wronged? You find yourself constantly defending her, even when you know deep down that the situation doesn't quite add up. Let me tell you about Ethan. Ethan's relationship had started out so full of promise, so full of warmth. They had big dreams together, and everything felt like it was going in the right direction. But soon something changed. Ethan's girlfriend, Sarah, had a unique way of dealing with everything that went wrong in her life. Whenever something didn't go her way, whether it was a tough day at work, an argument with her family, or even just a minor inconvenience, it was always someone else's fault. She was never the problem. The world was against her. At first, Ethan tried to be understanding. He'd listen to her talk about how unfair life was, how people always took advantage of her, how she was constantly let down by others. Life is hard for me, she would say. I always try my best, and yet it feels like I'm the one who's always left behind. It made Ethan feel like he had to be her knight in shining armor. He wanted to protect her from the world. He wanted to be the one who made everything okay again. But the longer he stayed in this relationship, the more he started to see a troubling pattern. No matter what happened, she was always the victim. If a friend didn't return her call, it was because they didn't care about her. If she got passed over for a promotion, it was because her boss was biased. If she lost a friendship, it was because that person was jealous or didn't understand her. And Ethan? Well, Ethan was always the one who had to make it right. He was the one who had to fix things. If she was upset with someone, he had to apologize. If she was angry at the world, he had to listen to her vent for hours. And if she didn't get her way, well, that was his fault too. Have you ever been in a situation where you're the one carrying the emotional weight? You feel like no matter how much you give, no matter how much you try to make things better, it's never enough. Ethan, despite his best intentions, started to feel like he was constantly walking on eggshells. He would find himself spending more time trying to calm her down than actually living his own life. And all the while, Sarah would say, I don't understand why things always go wrong for me. It's like the universe just doesn't want me to be happy. She was constantly the victim, and Ethan, always the protector, was left drained. He had to spend so much time managing her emotions that he didn't have the time or energy to focus on his own well-being. Does that sound familiar? Being in a relationship where you feel like you're constantly supporting someone else, but they never take responsibility for their own life. It took Ethan a long time to realize that Sarah wasn't just dealing with a string of bad luck. She was choosing to play the victim. Every time she blamed the world for her misfortunes, she avoided looking inward. She avoided taking responsibility for her actions or the choices she made. In doing so, she trapped herself in a cycle of self-pity and dependency. And Ethan was trapped with her. But here's the thing. When someone refuses to take responsibility for their own life, it becomes impossible to build a future together. Ethan finally saw it. He couldn't keep being her savior. He had to stop letting her blame everyone and everything else for her struggles. He had to break free from her victim mentality. So here's my question for you. Have you ever been in a relationship where someone's always playing the victim? Where no matter what happens, you're the one left holding the bag? You're the one who's expected to fix everything? Think about it. True love is about mutual growth and support. But if you're constantly being asked to carry someone else's emotional baggage without them ever taking responsibility for their actions, you're not in a healthy relationship. It's not your job to rescue someone from their self-imposed victimhood. And most importantly, it's not your fault when they don't see that. Sign 5. She never takes responsibility, always shifting blame. Have you ever been in a relationship where, no matter what happened, she could never admit she was wrong? It's like no matter how clear the situation was, she always found a way to point the finger at someone else. Let me tell you a story about Ethan again, because I know some of you will see yourself in his situation. Ethan had always been a forgiving person. He believed in second chances, in the idea that no one was perfect. But there was something about Sarah that really started to weigh on him after a while. She could never ever take responsibility for her actions. At first, it was small things. Maybe she'd forget to pick up groceries. And when Ethan gently reminded her, she'd say, "I didn't have time. I was busy with other stuff." And okay, everyone forgets sometimes, right? No big deal. But over time, it wasn't just about groceries. It was bigger things, things that really mattered. One evening, they had plans to go out for dinner. Ethan had booked a reservation at their favorite spot weeks in advance. He was really excited, having put thought into this evening. But when the time came, Sarah texted him saying she wasn't ready yet. No biggie, he waited. And then she texted again, saying she couldn't make it because she had too much to do. Ethan was disappointed but tried to keep his cool. "Okay, well, can we reschedule for tomorrow?" And that's when it happened. She snapped back, "I don't know why you're mad. It's not my fault you didn't plan things better." What? Wait a minute. This wasn't about planning. Ethan had done everything right. He had made the reservation. He had cleared his schedule. But now suddenly it was his fault? Does this sound familiar? That moment when, no matter what you do, you find yourself on the defensive, feeling like you're the one in the wrong. But wait, you're the one who's always making the effort, right? Ethan had been there before. It had happened with little things like being late to events or missing appointments. But this time felt different. It wasn't just a small misunderstanding. It was bigger. It was the pattern. Every time something went wrong in their relationship, Sarah would find a way to shift the blame. When things didn't go well with her family, it was always someone else's fault. If she lost her job, it was her boss's fault for being unreasonable. When she forgot to do something important, it was because Ethan hadn't reminded her in the right way. And here's the thing. Ethan had tried to talk to her about it. He asked her to just take responsibility for her actions, to acknowledge that sometimes things just didn't go as planned and that was okay. But she never did. In fact, every time he tried to bring up the issue, she would turn it around. "You're just attacking me again, aren't you?" she'd say. "You always make me feel like I'm not enough." And that was the kicker. She'd make him feel guilty for wanting her to own up to her mistakes. He was now the bad guy and she was the victim. Have you ever been in that position, where you try to have an honest conversation about something important, and instead of it being a chance for growth, it turns into a battle for who's right? You end up walking away feeling like you've somehow done something wrong, even though you're just asking for honesty. As time passed, Ethan started feeling smaller and smaller. He became used to carrying the weight of her mistakes, always stepping in to fix things that weren't his fault. And that's the problem. He was becoming a fixer, always repairing the messes that Sarah made. But every time she'd deny any responsibility, it wore him down until one day he had an epiphany. This wasn't a partnership. It was a one-sided relationship, where he was expected to carry all the emotional labor, while she never learned how to grow or be accountable. Sign 6, she's always jealous, insecure about your relationships with others. Have you ever been in a relationship where no matter what, your partner just couldn't handle you talking to other people, especially the opposite sex? Every time you so much as smiled at someone, she'd suddenly become cold, distant, or even downright angry. Do you know that feeling where you're constantly walking on eggshells around her, not knowing if she's going to blow up over something minor? Let me tell you about Ethan once again, because I know a lot of you might see parts of yourselves in his story. Ethan had been in a relationship with Sarah for over a year, and everything was supposed to be perfect, right? But one thing started to gnaw at him: her jealousy. It didn't matter if he was simply having a casual conversation with a friend, or if he was just being polite to a colleague at work. Sarah always seemed to interpret it as something more than it was. And the worst part? She would make him feel like it was his fault. There was this one time when Ethan was at a friend's birthday party. He was chatting with his old friend Maria, whom he hadn't seen in months. It was a simple conversation, catching up about life, work, and mutual friends, but Sarah was there, and she didn't like the way he was smiling at Maria. The next day, Sarah confronted him. "I saw the way you were looking at her," she said. "You looked so happy talking to her. I can't believe you'd do that to me." Now Ethan was confused.
What was happening?
He had known Maria for years. They were friends, plain and simple. Yet Sarah's insecurity turned a harmless conversation into a battleground. Ethan tried to explain, but it felt like no matter what he said, nothing could make her believe him. It wasn't just Maria either. It was every woman, every colleague, every female friend. Sarah had a way of making Ethan feel like he was always on the verge of cheating. It didn't matter that he had never given her a reason to doubt him. She just couldn't shake the feeling that someone might steal him away. Have you ever been in a relationship where your partner's jealousy made you feel trapped? You want to be a good partner. You want to be honest, open, and build trust. But when they're constantly looking over your shoulder, questioning every interaction you have, it feels like you're suffocating. Ethan found himself apologizing for things he didn't even do. Every time he would talk to a woman, no matter how innocently, he would feel guilty, as if he had done something wrong. Sarah's jealousy began to cloud every aspect of his life. It wasn't just about conversations anymore. If Ethan had plans with friends, she'd make subtle remarks about how he was abandoning her. If he had to stay late at work, she'd text him repeatedly, asking if there was a woman involved. She would accuse him of being distant, of being too friendly with people, and every time he'd have to prove himself. And that took a toll on Ethan. It wore him down emotionally and mentally. He loved Sarah, but the constant accusations made him question everything. Was he doing something wrong? Was he making her feel insecure without realizing it? Or was it just that her jealousy was a reflection of her own fear and lack of trust? Have you ever been questioned like that? Have you ever felt like you couldn't talk to someone without having to justify it to your partner? It can be exhausting, right? Ethan began to wonder if the relationship was sustainable in this environment. True love should build trust, shouldn't it? And yet, he found himself living in a cycle of doubt and insecurity that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with Sarah's own insecurities. Eventually, Ethan had to confront Sarah. He had to ask her a tough question. Why do you feel this way? What do you need from me to feel secure? And while he didn't have all the answers, he realized that without trust, there was no foundation to build their relationship upon. The jealousy, the accusations, they were eroding what they had. Sign 7. She disrespects you, constantly overlooks your boundaries. Have you ever been in a relationship where, no matter how many times you express your boundaries, your partner just doesn't seem to respect them? Every time you try to stand firm, it's like they push against you, testing your limits until you're left feeling drained and unappreciated. Ethan's story is one I know will resonate with many of you. He had been dating Sarah for a while, and at first things were going great. But soon little things started happening, things that started to gnaw at him. At first it was harmless. She'd take his things without asking, maybe borrow his jacket when he was cold, or grab his phone to check the time without saying anything. He didn't mind so much at first. It's not a big deal, he'd tell himself, brushing it off with a smile. But over time it started to get worse. She'd show up at his place without texting first, walk into his private space without permission, and even interrupt him while he was in the middle of a conversation, demanding his attention. And every time Ethan felt that familiar knot in his stomach, the one that told him, this doesn't feel right. But when he brought it up to Sarah, she always had an excuse. Why are you being so uptight? I just wanted to be close to you, she would say. making him feel like he was the one in the wrong. This was the pattern with Sarah. Whenever Ethan tried to express his discomfort with her actions, she would either dismiss him or make him feel guilty. He tried explaining his boundaries, his need for personal space, his desire for respect, but every time it was as if she couldn't understand why he was upset. And it wasn't just little things anymore. It was bigger issues, more serious matters. There was one time, for example, when Ethan had planned a quiet evening to unwind after a stressful week. He had told Sarah in advance that he needed time alone to recharge, just a few hours to himself. But when the time came, Sarah ignored his request completely and showed up at his door uninvited, expecting him to drop everything. "What's the big deal?" she asked. "I just wanted to spend time with you. You're always so busy." Ethan was torn. He loved her, of course, but why couldn't she respect something so simple as his need for space? He tried to be calm, but she just wouldn't listen. She crossed a boundary, his boundary, without any regard for what it meant to him. Does this sound familiar? Have you ever been in a relationship where you've communicated your boundaries clearly, only to have them completely ignored? It's frustrating, isn't it? Ethan tried to stay patient, but it wasn't just the small things anymore. It was everything. Every time he asked for something to be respected, Sarah either ignored it or tried to turn the situation around, making him feel guilty. The respect he needed, both emotional and physical, was always second to her wants, and it wore him down. The worst part was the gaslighting. She would say things like, "You're overreacting. You know I didn't mean it like that." And somehow Ethan would end up apologizing for something that was her fault. It wasn't about the big gestures anymore. It was the constant undermining of his needs and emotions. It was as if in Sarah's eyes his boundaries didn't matter. Her wants and desires always came first. And no matter how much he tried to explain, she couldn't or wouldn't see it. So what about you? Have you ever felt disrespected in a relationship? Have you tried to communicate your needs, only to be brushed off or made to feel like you were being unreasonable? I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me about a time you've had to stand your ground and defend your boundaries, or a moment when you realized your partner wasn't respecting you. It's a tough thing to realize, but understanding when your boundaries are being crossed is the first step to standing up for yourself. You deserve a relationship where both your emotional and physical boundaries are valued and respected. So now you know, these are not just random red flags. These are signs, clear, painful, and deeply rooted in philosophy and human nature. Marcus Aurelius didn't write about modern love, but he understood human behavior better than most. A stupid woman, as Stoicism sees her, is not evil. She's untrained, undisciplined, guided only by impulse, ego, and fear. But if you've loved one, it's not your shame. It's your lesson. Ethan walked away, finally. Not because he stopped loving her, but because he started loving himself. And I want you to ask yourself, right now, are you in a relationship that makes you more or makes you less? Drop a comment below. Which of these signs hit you the hardest? What's your story? Because you never know, your story might save someone else's heart. And if you've made it this far, you're not just a viewer, you're someone who's ready to grow. So subscribe, like this video, share it with someone who might be stuck in a love that's slowly breaking them. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.